Exactly. Hey, everybody. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Yes, Sam Brand Show. I'm your host, Kathy Klotz-Guest. And with me is the fabulous Jennifer Iannolo, who I just got to tell you, before talking to her today, we've never talked. It's just that I've followed her online on Facebook, and I love her energy. She's just badass. She's amazing.
Yeah.
She's powerful. She's kind. She cares about the world. I'm like, I must meet this woman. I must meet her. So I am just so honored to have her on Yes and Brand Show. And those of you, everybody deserves an intro, even though many of you will watch this and you know her because she's awesome. And if I miss anything, Jennifer, please jump in.
Okay.
Jennifer, what hasn't she done? She is the founder of the Concordia Project, and she works to reframe empowerment for all people. She's worked with women all around the world. She's spoken on empowerment with the State Department. She has worked in Silicon Valley, where we have this gender imbalance in tech. And she knows all too well about the imbalances and the inherent sort of dichotomies in empowerment. And she's all about empowering women. And she believes that the future of female might not be the right way to approach it. So welcome, Jennifer.
Hi.
You badass.
Back at you, baby.
Well, thank you. Let's talk about your story for a little bit, and we'll get into. There's so many great things about your story that I love, and I believe everyone has a great story. Everybody has a great story,
Yes.
and it's really a matter of owning it and using it to propel you forward. And your story, I'm just curious, how did you get to where you are? What do you think led you to this moment of like empowering all people and women maybe specifically?
Well, it's so funny. The whole conversation about feminism, it started hitting me a few years ago, right? When there were conversations happening, particularly about startups in Silicon Valley and kind of what was going on in the world with women. And I started asking myself, like, why does this not resonate with me? Why, I always had it that feminism was about like bra burning and, burning down the patriarchy and all this kind of thing. And I realized that the context I got from my mother was not that. So this is a woman who set off at the age of 19, got on a boat from Scotland, sailed to America by herself, and started her life.
Wow.
Yeah. And so she never asked anybody for permission. She never thought to herself, I'm a girl, I can't do that. She packed her trunk and she left. And so I started looking at her and the female conversations in my family. And my grandmother, her mother was a Rosie the Riveter in World War II. So she built bombs and raised 9 kids almost by herself. And then my grandmother on my father's side was in southern Italy during World War II. She got divorced. Wow. So the conversation of the ladies in my family is pretty much like, hi, we're here and we're doing this thing, so get out of the way. So for me, I wondered why I had this conversation versus what I saw a lot of my female friends having. And I realized it's because there was this context called nobody asked for permission because it wasn't necessary. And so I thought, wow, if I could bottle this and give this away, imagine how much freer women might feel, or what could the world look like? And so I started talking about that and started finding that people, once they realize that empowerment lives in here, that no one's coming to give it to you. My whole thing is no one's coming.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. I totally agree. And I can totally see how if you weren't raised in that context, if you were always it's social conditioning.
Yeah.
And as you so well know, and I can see if you weren't raised in that environment, that it might be one of those things where if you were told no, and if you were told women can't do that, you start to then believe that and start to seek out permission when you don't need it. And so I think that what you're saying, I totally agree with. No one's going to save you. And I always joke that the chivalry cavalry ain't come to save my ass. Not coming. There ain't
No.
isn't none. And
I
so,
still catch myself waiting, and I'm like, what is it? Who are you waiting for?
why am I? Hello. It is. No, it's so true. And I also understand the context for so many women who also had the opposite experience, because I've met them where they were in very maybe abusive relationships, contexts, and they sort of their self-esteem took that hit, and they just didn't realize that they could choose to believe in themselves, and that is a choice. And that's so I love what you're saying, and it resonates with me, you know.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's a choice, and people may not know that, right? So we can easily stand in a place of, well, it's a choice, so pick yourself up, but not necessarily. Not if you live in an environment where that's not even in the realm of conscious thought. Right? I've been to places in India and Nepal where a man's signature is required to start a business. Or, you know, I've had young women come up to me who've gotten into amazing business programs and their father said no. Wow. And so they came to me and said, what should I do?
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, you know, we take it for granted. It really is true. And sometimes it's important to remember. I think that's really an amazing context, because we really take it for granted sometimes, as hard as it can be here. You know, and I came out of Silicon Valley. I'm still living here, where women are 6% of executives. Yeah. So it's such a polarized world. We forget that we can help each other and do something. We can do something to change it. It won't always be easy, but we can take steps to change it. And we forget that other places in the world, there are like barriers that I think are so real by law, you know. Like
being sent out to a cowshed because you have your period. And you might get bitten by a poisonous snake and die while you're out there.
Oh, it's interesting. You know, and I remember being 24 years old, and the company that I worked with sent me to the Middle East. And I remember just my naivete, because nobody prepared me. I was 24. It's the first time I'd been to the Middle East. I was a 24-year-old blonde. I go to the Middle East, and not only will men not shake my hand, they won't listen to me when I present. They turn to the male presenter who's with me and say, could you clarify? And he's like, nope, it's her data. It's her study. She's the person. And they could not bring themselves to ask me. They had to go through the guy, that, you know, sort of that credibility by gender proxy kind of thing. And it was like, it blew my mind. And you do forget that there are these, they're very real things out there in the world.
It's jarring.
Yeah, for sure.
And the thing too, you know, and part of it too is the male conversation. I mean, I have 5 brothers. So I was instructed, like, how men think. Here, if they say this, here's what they mean. When you go out, when I went off to school in New York City, I was pretty much given a training session of like, here's bitch face. You know, when you walk down the street, here's how you're going to walk, and here's what your face is going to look like.
Wow.
Never had a problem in 25 years, knock on wood. Because my bitch face gets strong.
That's quotable. Your bitch face game is on point, girl. Your bitch face game. Isn't that funny that we even have to say that? Like, that's kind of funny and sad and funny at the same time.
Yeah.
And when did you realize that you, because you're pretty you're self-directed. You're a highly self-directed person. When did you realize that you could lean into an opportunity to sort of help lift other women up? And when did you sort of, the light bulb go on and you went, you know what, this is an aha moment. I could help.
Well, it's funny. We talk about yes and, right? And, so here I was, I had been working with a business partner. We created the world's first food podcast network. So this was back in 2006, before podcasting was cool. And we were on a plane every month to a different place. And we were filming winemakers and chefs and farmers. It was best, like, dream job ever. And I burned out. So we did too many planes too quickly, too many time zones. And my immune system just went like, okay, we're all done. We're not doing this anymore. And I woke up one day and I could not I couldn't get out of bed. And I found out that I had triggered this autoimmune response where I was allergic to like almost all food.
Oh, wow.
And so for a food career, that kind of sucked. that put a small wrench in things, right?
Oops.
So I had to figure out, I'm like, okay, the first place I went to was life is over and I can just die now because there's nothing left for me. What's the point? That was my Italian side. And then I realized like, well, okay, I can either stay in bed here and feel sorry for myself, but I'm my mother's daughter. So what am I going to do? And so I started looking at, okay, clearly food is not really my option anymore as a career because it's too complicated. What the hell else am I going to do? And I started thinking about, okay, so I started getting myself well, and I realized like there's something to this. There's something to picking yourself up and recreating your life that has meaning because I'm not the only one going through this.
Yeah.
And it was a slow evolution. Like I dabbled in the wellness space. Was I going to do wellness? And then I just started noticing all these women coming to me. And I thought, oh, there's something. Let's see what this is. When I was coaching some startups and things like that. And then I realized I need something bigger than this. I'm a very mission-driven human. I need a passion.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, so let's answer a big question. What's the one thing on earth I can't be with? Let's start there. And the thought of a young girl somewhere on planet Earth being sold or given away or murdered because she wasn't worth anything was the thing that was like, wow, if I'm going to do something for the second half of life, let it be this, something around this, because it's a conversation I cannot be with. So I examined all the things. Like I knew I didn't want to work in anti-trafficking because that was too intense and emotional and all of that. And I thought, well, what can I do on the positive side? And kind of landed in this space of some people came and asked me to talk. So I gave a talk at Harvard, and which was super fun. And and it was Harvard, right? So and I did this workshop. I created a workshop called How to Have It All. Because I kept hearing like, can we or can't we? And I thought, well, what is all? Why are we asking if we can have it or not if we don't even know what it is? So I thought, okay, I'm going to do a workshop called How to Have It All. And they had assigned this small room for it. And I thought, okay, let's see if anybody shows up. I don't know if this is going to resonate or not. So I'm in the room early and I'm sitting and I'm checking into Facebook and announcing that I'm at Harvard doing this talk. And I look up and the room is standing room only. There are lines out both doors. And I thought, I think I've hit a chord.
Yeah, you nailed something.
Yeah. And so I took them through these exercises and, there was a girl in the back who raised her hand and she said, I don't think I want kids. I was like, well, I'm glad you really learned that now instead of 10 years down the road when you're having them. Yeah. So I realized there was this whole conversation with young women that was not being had about who you are, what you're creating, who says so, and stop waiting for permission. And so everything blossomed after that. I realized that there was something to do here.
Yeah. I wish I had something like that when I was younger.
Me too.
Because, the thought that you could choose not to have kids. I mean, and I know intellectually, yes, you can choose. It's a choice. But it was just sort of expected. And women standing up, I was raised Catholic, big Catholic family, Catholic. Yep. And it's like the thought that you could say, no, I don't want to do that. And you could stand up and say that at such a young age and have that self-awareness is such a powerful thing. Because I don't think, and I have kids, I'm a mom and I love being a mom. I also recognize it's not for everybody and it's okay. And I never got that sense growing up that I remember even my mom, but it's socialization, talking poorly, not because she's a bad person, out of lack of understanding, a lack of empathy for women who didn't have children. Well, I feel bad for them. And I remember saying, well, how do you know that they wanted kids? Maybe they didn't, or maybe they couldn't. And it was almost like, well, that's not a high calling. Being a mother is a high calling because it was very big Catholic family, right?
Oh yeah.
And
I'm the last of 7. I get it.
Totally, you get it. And so it was like you just never talked about that. So to hear you say that is so stunning and wonderful that women can recognize that and have the permission to stand up and say that. You know?
Yeah, and I'll tell you, that's another testament to my mother, because I knew at 18 that I was not going to be a mom. It was just, it wasn't my thing.
Yeah.
I literally played CEO as a kid. That was my total psycho, right? But that was my game as a child. Yeah. And so not once have I ever had one comment from my mother about that. She's never created an expectation. She's never put any kind of pressure on me. He literally just let me do what I wanted to do in life. Like, okay, well, that's your choice. And I have felt such extraordinary freedom because of that I am the super aunt to 14 amazing kids in my family. That is my role. Like, that is my dream role. Wow. I am Aunt Jen.
That's awesome. I bet you're a badass aunt too.
I'm a badass aunt. But that's the role I was meant to play, and I've never felt pressure to be otherwise. But I know that so many women get grief about this still.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's interesting. So I will say publicly, I don't talk about this much, that I struggled with fertility issues. And it's something that I don't really share with a lot of people. But my husband and I had a lot of miscarriages. We also had a stillborn child. And after that happened, even my own family judged me. Well, you waited till too late. They had a conversation at a Thanksgiving table about my issues. And I will never forget how crappy I felt. Yeah. And growing up, it was like, just to hear that you had this very different kind of social conditioning. And I think my mom, again, inherited this is from her mom, and it's this long line of guilt and Catholic guilt that, like, oh, this is your highest calling. Institutionalized. And it was like, if you can't have children, somehow you're wrong or bad. And I remember having to tell my mom, just, if you can't give me space and respect that not everybody can, and we're trying, and not judge me, that I cannot come to holiday dinners anymore. This is not acceptable. Yeah. And I think it took me saying that for her to change her attitude and say, I didn't realize what I was doing to you and how that made you feel. Yeah. The whole dinner table discussing my issue as if it's some fodder for a holiday dinner is completely inappropriate. And I will just not come if you continue this discussion. And like, somehow it was my fault or something lacking in me because of my struggles with fertility. And that was the Catholic family I grew up in. And, and what's beautiful now is, like, fast forward, 10, 12 years, my niece stood up at Thanksgiving dinner the other day and she said, you know what? I don't want kids. And I went, kudos. And my family went, all right. And it's like, so I look at how far we've come, and just in a generation, and I'm grateful. I have voice, so I don't, but my niece stood up proudly and said, I don't want kids. And I went, if that's it. And nobody said, oh, you'll change your mind. You'll meet the right guy. Nobody said that, which when I was growing up, it was like, you'll change your mind. You'll meet the right. It was just the expectation. And what I love is that even within my family, as flawed as we are, there was an evolution. There was an evolution of acceptance. And I was like, wow. And I told my niece, you have no idea, because your mom and I, my sister, said, your mom and I got so much grief if we even said we didn't want kids. And so, like, I said, I don't think you know how wonderful this is. And because she was just like, well, doesn't everybody get that treatment? I'm like, no.
But it's true, that evolution, because the other day, so we had a big family gathering the other day, and my 10-year-old niece, she's, because I'm scouting the kids to see who's going to take care of me when I'm old, because I need somebody, so I've got to groom someone. That's right. So my one niece, she's kind of the fabulous one, right? Her bedroom is decorated as Paris. And when she found out I lived in Paris, I am now the top of the top for her. And she said to me the other day, she's like, you now have a daughter, and I'm going to make you your own wing in my house. And if there are kids, I'll put them in a wing on the other side of the house. Nice. And I will take care of you. You have nothing to worry about. So first thought was, thank you. Like, got that one handled. But the second thought was, she just said, if there are kids, like her thinking as a 10-year-old is already, maybe there will be, maybe there won't be. It's not an assumed. And I thought, this is amazing for a child to say that.
It really
is a different conversation out there.
That is really, it really is. And I take heart in that. That is that women now have choices, right? It's like, you know, when I was a kid, you know, I don't remember in any classroom discussions discussing women as president, but, you know, in the wake of Hillary, you know, my nieces are like, well, when I become president, I'm like, that's right.
Exactly.
Not if, when. And just that evolution gives me joy. I sit there and my sister and I look at each other and we're like, this is amazing. You know, just that line of thinking.
Yeah.
Is so powerful.
Very true. No, so we're evolving, and yet we're messy right now. It's messy.
It is.
And I think so when I go back to that phrase of the future is female, it's never sat well with me.
Tell us a little more about that. Yeah.
Well, because if the future is female, where are the men? Okay. So that's my first thing. Like, as if I were a man hearing that, what would my first reaction be? Hell no. And I would dig in my heels and I'd fight back twice as hard. Right. And so what I see happening is we're creating this zero-sum game of the power is mine. No, it's mine. No, it's mine. No, it's mine.
Yeah.
And women have to take their power back. And I'm like, well, but I never gave mine away. So which women and why did that happen? And we're sort of putting this blanket over everything. Like, well, the women are just going to burn everything to the ground. Like, that's the extreme end of the conversation. But my issue with it is that by declaring something as ominous as the future is female, there is no room for men. Yeah. And they are half the planet.
Do you ever think, it's funny because I've heard both sides, and I'm a feminist and I'm empowered and I love men, and you know, I've got three brothers, and my closest friends and coming out of tech, my best bosses were and champions were men, and my best friends in the world to date, men. So I came from a very male dominated, you know, world. And is it possible because the other side of the coin, and I'm sure you've heard this, is like the gross misinterpretation of that future is female. Like, you know, because I talk to my friends that wear those shirts and God bless them and they love them. And I hear what they're saying. It's not we're going to burn everything down. It's, hey, there's going to be a reckoning where you can't ignore us anymore. So they're not saying there's no room for men. They're saying it will be a point where it's no longer okay to have 6% of the executives in Silicon Valley and women only getting 2%. 2% of all VC funding, Jennifer, goes to women. Of all. So I think they're thinking that we're not burning down the house. We're just saying we're going to rearrange the goddamn furniture. And so that it works for women, because this isn't working. And so I've not interpreted it as the extreme. And so how do you deal with that? Because I'm sure you've had those conversations where it's like, that's not what we're saying. That's not what we're saying. Yeah.
Well, where I always come from with this stuff is because words have meaning and words have power, right? So it's the impact of the words, right? So if I'm trying to stand as an impartial third party here, right? Like if I try to step outside it completely, I can see how the way it lands for men would be very, very confronting. Because think about it. If you saw the phrase, the future is male, well, first of all, you'd be like, duh.
The present is male. So duh. The past was male.
Right.
Duh. Yeah.
But you know, it can land very ominously. And my whole thing with it is, if we look at the numbers, where we're headed, not where we are now, but where we're headed to, you know, the numbers in higher education, men are dropping like flies out of higher education. Like in about 30 years, women are going to be running probably the business world, because there's going to be there are no males to replace the workforce, right? As we have more women in higher education. So there will come a point at which these numbers shake out. But my fear is that if we have it as a zero-sum game, we're going to get to a point in 30 years or maybe sooner where the men are disempowered. Because young boys now, I mean, think about the conversations we're having. You know, I think about my nephews who are between 10 and 21. And a lot of the stuff that they're seeing in the news, a lot of what they're reading is like, men are bad, men are bad, men are bad, men are bad. These are sort of these top line conversations. And so I always wonder, what are they thinking in their 15-year-old heads? What's happening? So rather than create more of the same problem on the other side, can we do it differently? Can we do it in a way that empowers all human beings to look and say that equality is something that can be achieved? So it's messy. And where I always come back to is that it seems like right now we're not willing to give each other the grace of the growth and the grace of the mess, because it's messy.
It's messy. It's messy.
And it's going to be messy for a while. And there are no easy answers. Like all of this, like this is my opinion. I mean, there are lots of them. So I'm just trying to look at it in a way like what works.
Yeah. And I totally get that. I've always felt, and I totally recognize that there are lots of voices. I mean, even, you know, here we are, two women talking about feminism, and there's no one brand of feminism. Everybody interprets it differently. And that's the beauty. That's part of the tapestry of women's voices, is that we all, you know, come at it differently. And, you know, some women's voices, you know, women of color, the LGBTQIA community, they have needs where they feel they've been marginalized and underrepresented. And so there's no one monolith. Right. And so I'm totally with you. And that makes sense. I, you know, as the mom of, you know, males, and I've got brothers, and I care very much about what you're saying. I've never interpreted the headlines as men are bad. At least at the yes, there are extreme voices.
Right, I'm going like to the extreme.
I totally get you. And there are extreme voices saying that. I've interpreted most of the press as being, this shit's real. We got to deal with it. It's not going away unless we change it. And it's been going on for too long. So by the time that boiling pot, you know, blows and the lid just trajectory jets off the boiling pot, tensions spill over, because this problem has been going on for so long. I mean, you know, the Bill Cosby thing, 5 decades. This went on for 5 decades. You know, they just booted Roman Polanski out of the
yesterday.
Yesterday, 40 years, this guy, you know, and he raped a 13-year-old girl. So, I mean, if we're going to be honest, I think the anger, I think what we're seeing is that the reason it's boiling over isn't, most of us love men. It's just,
we've had enough.
We've had enough. We're done. The hashtag me too, hashtag time's up, because men have behaved badly. Not all. And I think there's a marginalization where a lot of men have also looked the other way, and a lot of men have claimed they didn't see it. And I think there's a feeling of like, okay, it's got to change. But you say something really important, and I don't want to get lost here, because I think you're totally spot on. It's not going to change overnight.
No.
And a lot of men have unconscious bias. They're not bad people. We all have unconscious bias. And if we give them no place to learn or grace to change, we make them feel like, what do I do? What do I say? And we have to allow for that. Right? I think you're totally spot on. Because
we don't want to be messy. That we don't want to be
messy. We don't want to be messy.
We want it to be neat and tidy and okay, everything's fixed.
And it can't be. Oh no, it can't be. And your point is a really good one. I think it's funny. I've had this conversation with my friend Stacy DePolo over at GoDaddy. We talk about this a lot. Let's give men somewhere to go, because a lot of men really want to learn. They just don't know how.
You know, it's funny. I had a conversation on Facebook a couple of years ago. It was before Facebook Live. That would have been really interesting. Where I was at a conference and I was on a panel called "How to Empower Men to Empower Women in the Workplace." I was like, well, this is going to be interesting. But I walked in, the only man was the moderator. And I said, well, how are we going to have this conversation? There are no men here. And he said, well, you know, we asked like 8 men, but nobody would come. And I'm like, well, given the atmosphere in this room, I can't really blame them for that, right? It was pretty hostile. And so I went on Facebook and I was like, guys, how can we empower you in this conversation? And the my one friend from high school, it took like 15 minutes for anybody to dare to say anything, right? So then my friend from high school, he kind of walks out on the ledge and he's like, look, I think women are awesome. I want to empower them, but I am tired of getting yelled at. And there's 90 comments in 30 minutes from men just like, we want to help. Please stop screaming at us. We don't know what to do. So it became obvious to me that we're not giving them any tools. Like we could actually empower them in the conversation of empowerment if we gave them more info. And so that's where it is. So that's where the mess is. And it's like, okay, well, let's roll up our sleeves and let's figure this one out. Not on the internet, though.
No,
It's not going to work.
Not going to work. It's the anger. It's too much anger there.
Everybody's angry.
Everybody's angry. Although I also feel like when I hear men say "stop screaming at us," I think that itself triggers me because I don't think all women scream. I think that's a stereotype. So when I hear stuff like that, I go, "Okay, see, that's the kind of shit that makes women upset."
Well,
and it triggers, and then we get mad, and then they want to know why we get mad, right? Yeah. So I think there's a lot of things that men do that honestly trigger women. I mean, I had a conversation the other day. Some of my best mentors and best friends in improv, and I've been doing improv for 20 years, are men. And I had one of my good guy friends that I've known for 15 years doing improv with. He's like a brother to me. In a span of like 15 minutes, talk over the women who were trying to express themselves, take credit for, reword what they were. And I was like, and I had to say time out. And they said, well, okay, do me a favor. And I've known this guy 15 years. We're really good friends. He's like a brother. And I said, he said, please help make me aware of all the times I do that. And I had to stop him 3 times in the span of 15 minutes. And his jaw
I'm going to need a shock collar.
Exactly. And his jaw dropped because he really honestly didn't realize how, and he's a good guy. He didn't realize how often he was doing it. But I say that because I think sometimes men, it's so easy for men to get defensive, and I get it. We need to help men. We definitely need to remember that most men out there are good and they want to help.
Yes,
but I also think men need to take responsibility. And when a woman says, please stop doing that, men need to hear that. They need to say, you're right. They need to it's not about arguing with the woman. If a woman says, you keep interrupting me, you're talking over me, you're telling me what I think, and you're just reworded and took credit for what I said. And men need to understand when a woman says that, she's serious, she means business, and take that. Don't argue with her. Yeah. And I think that's where it gets messy, to your point, because women it's not easy. I'll be honest. And these are men that I've known for many years and I'm friends with, and I love them to pieces, but I swear to God, he's like the brother I want to strangle.
And it's like you don't want to walk around mad all the time, right?
No.
But once your eyes are open, they're open. And so I noticed so many things I didn't before.
Yeah.
And, it's frustrating because, even a term like mansplaining, right? Men get very upset about it. And yet, last year I had a thread about it that was nothing but paragraphs of women stepping in being like, there it is.
There it is. Hello.
Yeah.
I hear actually, Jennifer, and I back out. I back away because every time I hear a guy go actually, and that is mansplaining. And what it's important for them to understand is how they contribute to the dynamics of the conversation. Women need to hear them out, but men also need to be aware that why am I explaining this to a woman? Because when I do that, I'm acting like she doesn't know, and I'm making an assumption.
Right.
And that is where women get triggered because oftentimes women do know. I did an MC event and for a company, and a man afterwards wanted to talk to me, and he wanted to actually me on the history of comedy. And I said, "Oh, I'm sorry. Do you do improv? Have you ever been on stage?" "No." But I'm going to explain to you. And I said, well, actually, you're actually, because improv started with Viola Spolin, a woman. So actually, no.
But it's here actually and raise you.
And I'm going to raise you. Boom. Mic drop. It was a woman named Viola Spolin. So do not come to a woman who's been doing this for 20 and just assume that you know more than she does. And so that's the kind of stuff that triggers women. And I think men need to hear it. But you're right. Women also need to be aware that it's not going to be flipping a switch and overnight men are going to get it. And we have to be patient, and we have to help them understand, and we have to give the benefit of the doubt, because most of my guy friends are amazing people.
Yeah.
They really want to learn, and they're afraid to speak up. I think you're right. They're afraid to speak up.
Well, because everyone is, to use a terrible phrase, trigger happy right now, right? Like mansplaining triggers. And I made the mistake of using the phrase toxic masculinity, referring to an article on Twitter a couple weeks ago.
Oh, did you get like,
well, here's what happened. So it was after the horrible Parkland shooting, and there was an article about the boys are not okay. There was an op-ed in the New York Times, and I thought, wow, this is a really powerful statement from a man. And I just said, like, can we please do better by our young men? Can we get rid of this toxic masculinity that is so pervasive? So I put it out, and I made the mistake of, I tagged 2 of my nephews because I wanted them to see the article. And I left Twitter alone, and I went about my day. Well, I checked back in at the end of the day, and I see that I have 700 Twitter notifications. And I was like, oh God, what happened? Shitstorm. Well, Twitter plucked it and put it into moments.
Wow.
So suddenly there were people calling me all kinds of things, from angry lesbian to like, well, clearly she can't get a boyfriend. So I'm like, oh. And then I'm horrified because my nephews are getting dinged with all these notifications. I ended up just taking it off altogether. But if it weren't for them, I would have left it up. But I thought, wow, one little phrase and men.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's interesting. You're frozen right now, by the way, in my screen, but that's okay. I'll talk while we figure this out and wait for Wi-Fi to shake it out. I think that's interesting that's sad that happened. And I'm sad that happened to you, but it's interesting that term triggers a lot of people, and they maybe understand the context of usage. And but even that's a really good example and a sad example. And I'm sorry that happened to you. That itself highlights the very problem that we have, which is we can't even have a conversation without men getting angry, women too. But what I've found on Twitter, because I've had the same thing happen with trolls, when women get angry at me, they don't go quick to the name calling. It's the men that go quick to taking a woman and assaulting her sexuality and taking her down. And that very example demonstrates why Twitter can't have nice things, why we can't have nice things on Twitter.
It's very true. It's like, first of all, what does my sexuality have anything to do with any of it? Like,
it doesn't.
Angry lesbian is where you go to because I'm on your side and I'm saying you need better. And then I had another guy accuse me of wanting to turn all the young men gay. I'm like, yes, that is my secret mission. You got me.
That's my agenda.
And so it's like, wow, I'm on the side of humanity. Yeah. And I think we're not doing right by anyone by having these ridiculous internet arguments. Yeah. But it was a turning point for me because I realized that these conversations cannot happen online.
No.
Like what we're doing with the Concordia Project is having them in person, in a room, where you have to be accountable and responsible.
Yeah. Tell us about that. This is a great yes and segue because you're all about empowering conversations about empowerment. I like that. Empowering empowerment. Yeah. And you're such a yes and person. Tell us about the Concordia Project and what that is. And because I really agree with you. I think it's messy out there online, and people who don't even care to seek out any information about your background just go straight to name calling. It's very hard. It's hard to have a rational conversation.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and the reason I started Concordia was because I realized a conversation needed to happen. I didn't know what it was yet. And I thought, let's explore this a little bit. So, I do some speaking for the State Department. So I was in Nepal and India and just talking about like what it was like to be a young woman and an older woman and all of these things. And I realized that as a gender, let's just say, we are more alike than we are different. There's DNA, there is social conditioning, there's all this stuff. And I thought, what would it look like if we could take all of these women and put them in one room, what would that conversation be like? So it's essentially a think tank. It's a global think tank. Right now it is just young women, but we will bring men into the conversation soon. Right now we're trying to establish a baseline of what kind of discourse we want to have, what we want to talk about. And there was this very magical moment last summer where we had, so that it's for women 18 to 25 right now, because that's that pivotal moment in life where we're making some pretty key decisions in all cultures, right? Am I going to get married? Am I going to college, etc.? And so, and they are sort of hopefully out of the sort of clutches of parents, right? They're starting to branch out on their own so they can make their own decisions most of the time. So we had women from 7 countries on an international, on a video call. And as we were going through the conversation, this one young woman from Mexico, she said, I'm going to be the president of Mexico one day. I said, well, yeah, you are. She said, but my father is giving me such a hard time about this because it's a dangerous profession in Mexico. And, you know, he's concerned for me and da, 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 da. So this 18-year-old from Nepal says, I'm having the same trouble in the conversation with my father. And so suddenly these 2 young women on opposite sides of the planet saw that they had the same issue.
Wow.
And then all the other women on the call said, well, we need to give you a better conversation. We need to have you talk with your father and brothers and da, 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 da. And so suddenly there was teamwork around this for these 2 young women to be supported. And I was in tears because I was like, my theory played out. Like, this is exactly what I thought would happen. And now it's verified like it happened.
Yeah.
So now we want to have women from every country on the planet involved in this conversation.
What a beautiful thing. I love that. I love that because prior to, you know, I didn't have that. You didn't grow up in a time of internet, and we didn't have that. And I think when you're 18 to 25 as a woman, yeah, I remember feeling alone in some of my decision making.
Totally alone.
Totally alone. And we didn't have the power of the internet for making those connections. And it would have meant so much to know you're not alone, to talk to other women around the world. And I think that's such a great thing to facilitate. I think that what a fabulous thing to do. I mean, that's a huge yes and to the world.
Yeah. You know? Well, this will be the rest of my life, what I focus on. It's
you found your thing. You found your thing.
I thought it was food, but turned out
it is food. It's just food for thought. It's a different kind of food, girl. It's a different kind of. Yeah.
And talk about a yes and. So I'm creating salon dinners so we can put that all together.
I love that. I love that because the internet itself and the work that you do is fundamentally a yes and. It's all about collaboration.
Yes.
The work you do is essentially this big collaborative think tank. And when people are helping people with get through the same hurdles, I think that is the best use of this kind of collaborative thing that the internet allows us to do. I can't think of a better example when we're able to solve world issues and challenges because of that. That's it, man. You found your big yes and. I think that's amazing.
Yes and every day.
You got a yes and every day, but what a beautiful journey. I mean, you know, those of us who, you know, and I have so much respect for what you do. And I love that earlier in your journey, you thought food was it, and then you had allergies, but how beautiful that pivoted into something really amazing, you know?
Yeah. And that's the thing. Like, I was proud of my food work. I think we did some groundbreaking stuff. You know, we were talking about things nobody else was talking about.
Yeah.
But this is different.
Yeah.
This is like, we could actually change the world. Like, for real.
For real.
For real, we could change the world.
I get chills thinking about this because, you know, as a Gen Xer, you know, not having this stuff at that age, what would that have meant to me? And I can't help but think,
I can't even,
you know? Yeah.
Because I remember, so I got on AOL my senior year of college. And my senior thesis was on the information superhighway. I'm like, we're going to buy our clothes on the internet.
Wow.
We're going to buy cars on the internet. And people were like, whatever.
Yeah.
And here we are having a conversation on the internet, right?
Yeah.
So I saw it was coming. And for me, it was this opportunity to get out of my small town, get out of a small town mentality, see what was out there. My friends thought I was a total freak show. I was online dating in like 1995.
Wow.
And they're like, you're going to get murdered. You're going to
Oh,
I'm like,
no.
no, it's all good. It's fine. It's fine.
No.
But, you know, so seeing it's a blessing and a curse, right? So we can have these global conversations with young women, and that's great.
Yeah.
But when we want to bring men into the conversation, I feel like that needs to happen in person.
Yeah.
Where we can be face to face. We just did this, actually. We had a group of students come over from India between 13 and 15 years old. A friend of mine has this great organization called 1M1B, and he's creating 1 million entrepreneurs on the planet. And so these 15-year-olds were solving major problems in their communities. One of them was on the cover of every newspaper in India because he's trying to stop this lake that is on fire because it's so polluted. He's trying to clean it up. And so here are these teenagers changing the world. So we brought them to New York. We put them in a room with very accomplished female entrepreneurs and had them collaborate. But there were young men with them also. And they were stepping up to empower the women in their villages. And they were looking at how can we best contribute to this conversation? What can we do to make the world more equal? And I thought, this is the stuff. This is the stuff. Have them feel welcome. Have them be part of the solution instead of something to be solved.
I totally agree. Well, and we need it has to be together. It has to, it's not an either or.
They're half the planet.
They're half the planet. We need them. We need them. Well, it's interesting because, you know, I also, in the comedy world that I live in the improv world, we have this, it's a microcosm of the world out there at large, and we have the same issues. And one of the things that's been rocking the comedy world lately is it's the same exact Me Too stuff. Yep. And, you know, in my neck of the woods in the Bay Area, you know, the comedy community has really tried hard. You know, a microcosm in the Bay Area where I live has come together and said, there are some sexual harassers in our community, and the men are saying, we're not putting up with it. You don't get to harass our sisters. You don't get to harass our sisters. Now, it got a little weird because the men started to say, this is how we're going to solve the problem. And the women were like, excuse us. How about not dictating to us what you're going to do? Let us be part of it. But it was all good because the spirit was in the right place. The men actually, without being told, were stepping up and saying, no more, no more. And, you know, I think about how long I've been doing comedy, and just even 10 years ago, this conversation would never have happened. And there were harassers in the community. People look the other way. People look the other way. And now what's evolved is a consciousness where, you know, a lot of really amazing men want to step up and be part of it. And granted, it's a little awkward because everyone's getting used to this change, but but we have to allow for the grace and dignity that you talked about. And I totally agree. It's got to be a we. This is a we moment.
Yeah.
It's a we moment.
The thing about it, here's what I love more than any of it, is that the solution lies in personal responsibility.
Yeah.
It's actually a me conversation because it's, oh, wait, I can't step over that thing that just happened. Wait a minute. I need to step up. I need to speak up. I need to address this. This can't just fly by. And so for me, it all boils down to that. It's like, who are you going to be in that moment, human, seeing this thing unfold? Are you going to step up, or are you going to look the other way? And so it's this, I'm so in love with humanity. I really am. And it wasn't always that way. But when you give human beings the room to be great, they really step up. And I think that it's you've got to create that. You've got to give them room. You've got to give them room to get messy, give them room to work out what they need to work out, right? I didn't get here. I wasn't plopped in this place of thinking. Like, there's a lot of thinking that went into this, a lot of mental wrestling and to get here. But I can confidently know that and I will always be doing the work, but I've done a lot of the work, right? And it's because if no one's coming, I have to do it. No one's going to hand it to me. Like, here are the ideas you should be, you should be following.
No.
So, and it's harder, but it's so much more gratifying.
Yeah. It is, and it takes, and it also, you don't have to do it alone, which is great. When we work together, we can do so much more. I think one of the things that I've evolved in my thinking, I think, and I'll admit it, I'm fully human, and I think all humans are, we're all, listen, human card intact, trust me. All humans are like coffee makers. Mike and our mutual buddy has heard me say it a million times. We're all like coffee makers because we all got filters. And I think it's really the only way that you change it and take that responsibility is to be responsible for your own filter. And, even my thinking has evolved because I've always believed in the power of we, which means bringing men and women together as equals to solve problems. But I have to confess, when I came out of tech, and so the gender imbalance was so profound. Did I experience sexual discrimination and harassment? Yes.
Of course.
Yes. Of course. And so, and what I had to be aware of my own bias, and I'll just be honest about it. I think it's about being honest. I worked with a lot of very good men, but I lost respect for them because they knew. They knew, and they looked the other way. And they thought because they weren't the perpetrators that it was okay. And I thought, no, because you stuck to a bro code that hurt women.
Yes.
And this false notion, I can't turn in a bro. No, because what that bro did. And one of the things that I have to be, my own filter, is that when I hear men say I didn't know, I want to my first reaction
really not know.
My first reaction and I have men say that to me, Kathy, I didn't know. And my first reaction, I have to literally stop myself, because I'll be honest, guys, fully human. For anybody watching this, I'm not afraid to say it. My first reaction when guys tell me that, I'm like, yeah. But that's my own filter, and I have to remember that sometimes unconscious bias is exactly that. It isn't. I'm not faking it.
Right. It's a blind spot.
I didn't see it. And so I'm trying really hard to give my guy friends the benefit of the doubt. But I also think that we have to be honest and have a conversation where there are men who saw it. They saw this stuff in the workplace, and they looked the other way. And so it's kind of catching my own sort of like, my own, like, when I hear this, it brings up a lot of my own experience. And
look, I mean, when Me Too broke, a lot of women had a really rough week. Like, I remembered every single instance of everything. And man, when you take that over a 45-year span, holy crap, it was heavy. And I was like, oh, I'm actually angrier than I thought I was. I'm actually really pissed off right now. Yeah. And so that cumulative stuff that we put aside and we put aside and we put aside, man, does it add up? And so
it does.
And so it's allowing yourself also the grace to go through all of these spaces and be mad for a minute and then take stock and say, like, okay, well, what now? And always pointing the finger back here, like, okay, so who am I in this situation? Who am I going to be about it? And then what am I going to do about it? And it's a constant checking of oneself. That's the only way to do it. Like, look, I could be completely wrong. Who knows? Here's what I think. Doesn't mean it's the answer. Doesn't mean it's right. It's what I think and what I believe. It will evolve over time. I'm just trying to make my way through like everybody else.
Yeah.
In a way that works, right?
Yeah, for sure. I totally agree. If there's one piece of advice you could leave with this audience, and men, women, all of us, through your journey of empowerment, like, what's one thing? And again, I think empowerment is not a gender specific thing. I mean, what's one thing that you would say to people?
I would say that it's important to remember that empowerment cannot be given to you. So to extend the idea of no one is coming, it's that no one can give you empowerment. And that is actually the best possible news, because if they can't give it to you, they can't take it away from you.
I like that. God, I love that. That's such a big, big thing. And I agree. I really agree. It's like the biggest gift we can give ourselves is self-awareness and empowerment. Being honest with ourselves about who we are, what limitations we've put on ourselves.
Yeah.
We can't control what other people do.
Right.
But we certainly can control our own filters and be aware and be honest with ourselves. I think that's really important. And I think if you're over 35 and you're not honest with yourself, it's time to get really honest with yourself about your own human baggage.
Yeah.
Everybody has it, you know, and I love that. Well said. I think really make sure that nobody can give it to you, but nobody can take it away.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Jennifer, where can people find out more about you and all the wonderful work you're doing with the Concordia Project?
Yeah. So there are two places. So there's concordiaproject.org. So if any of you know women 18 to 25 who are up to something and awesome, please have them apply to be part of the project. I would love that. And then the rest of my life is at jenniferiannolo.com. That's all my speaking stuff and the work that I do with startups and female founders and all that fun.
That's awesome. I love it. I love it. And everybody, I'm Kathy Klotz-Guest. Some of you know me, some of you don't, but that's awesome. Maybe you listen because of a guest, and that's awesome. Welcome. We love having you. And I will post some of the links here that Jennifer mentioned after we get off the podcast here. And you can find out more about me at keepingithuman.com. And I have
that URL.
Exactly. Well, it's funny because people ask me about this all the time. It's like I started Keeping It Human in 2010. I had no idea by 2015 everybody would be human this and human that. I had no idea, but it's great. And we're talking about it because it's such an important thing. And I think if anything, one of the things that I love about bringing improv and comedy and all these different threads into the work I do, combined with the 15 years that I ran marketing and tech, is that, you know, we can have these wonderful human moments that make us better. They make companies better. They make people better. Yes. And so lean into it. Yes, and into it. Lean into that. So thank you, Jennifer, for being on this.
It's been so great.
Oh my gosh, you're wonderful. So
are you.
Thank you. And everybody have a wonderful, wonderful Friday and weekend. We'll see you on the next one. Bye.
All right. Take care.